Hello and welcome to EdSpace, where we discuss some of the week's top headlines with Mint's editor, Sukumar Ranganathan. Welcome to the show, Sukumar. First topic, Kingfisher. We all thought it was the end of Kingfisher. Now suddenly it has come back, or there seems to be some signs of revival. What is your take on this?
Actually, I'm not convinced that it's a comeback, right? And the reason for that is, I think Kingfisher had significant other issues apart from labor issues, right? The labor issues were things that got added on, and the labor issues were actually the effect of the financial trouble the airline was in. They stopped paying salaries since March, and obviously at some point in time people will stop working if you stop paying. So while the labor crisis, which is now over, or seems to be over, might have accelerated the process of the end, if I can use that word, I don't think it was in itself responsible for any of the airline's troubles. There are fundamental reasons, and the fundamental reasons have to do with decisions that were taken in the past, including the acquisition and the merger with Deccan, and also the way the airline has been run, which is trying to run a full service airline in a market which has definitely moved towards a low cost model, and the financial inadequacies that were the result of this approach to business. So this airline needs a lot of money now to recapitalize itself. And if you look at there are varying estimates. Some people say $400 million will do, some people say you need $1 billion. But whatever it is, it needs a significant sum of money. It owes banks and other lenders close to $1.8 billion. The finance is a big issue. The business model, when they come back, what's to say that the same thing will not happen again if they don't change the business model? So, there are business challenges, there are financial challenges. I think the labor issue is just one bit of it. But you're right, in between that became the main subject, and everyone started speaking about whether employees would protest during the Formula One races in Delhi. But I think the fundamental issues with the airline still remain, and unfortunately we still don't have any clear answers from the airline on how they're going to tackle them.
Did the government give Kingfisher, the government rather seems to have given Kingfisher a long rope, because it was only on Saturday that the DGCA revoked its license. Again, if you're looking at this, the lending institutions, SBI, for example, has been threatening action, but hasn't forced liquidation. So the government and the government banks, for example, haven't they been giving Kingfisher long rope? So obviously there's some kind of does it reek of a scam somewhere?
No, I don't think, I wouldn't use the word scam at all. But you are right. I personally believe that it was given far too much time. But I think that's the way business is done in this country. The banks, most of them state-owned, didn't really have an option. Right? You've lent them money, you've loaned them money, and you need to get your money back. You have to throw good money after bad. That seems to be the model that is followed everywhere in the world, and that's the model that they're following. As far as the government has to worry about two things, right? And this is on paper, right? There may be other things they worry about, but two things on paper. The first thing, what happens to the money that is owed the banks, because most of them are state-owned. You don't want that to be an issue. The second thing is what happens to the employees of the airline, because you can't have 7,000, 8,000 people suddenly going without jobs. What do you do? So the government is, I think it's behaved the way a government should behave, although I do think that in most other parts of the world, an airline like this would have probably gone under a lot sooner. But I just think that's the way we do business in this country. For instance, look at most of the banks are public sector banks, and Vijay Mallya is this flamboyant, larger than life figure. And you look at public sector bank chairman, they earn a pittance, right? Would I be sort of stretching things a bit if I said most of these chairmen are in awe of this man? I don't think so. They are likely to be in awe of this man, in awe of his lifestyle and things like that. So I think you'll have to go into a variety of reasons a variety of issues to understand why they loaned them so much money. The fact is, you loaned them the money, and you know how it goes, right? You owe me 100 rupees, it's your problem. But if you owe me 100 crores, then it's my problem. So it's the bank's problem. It's not so much Kingfisher's problem as the bank's problem. And because these banks are state-owned, it's the government's problem. So I think it's easy to say the government should have acted sooner, and I know that I've been one of these people who's consistently said the government should do sooner, because I think in most other parts of the world, Kingfisher wouldn't have been flying for so long. But that said, you have to think about the people, you have to think about the money.
You have Sir Richard Branson here, and you've just mentioned that Vijay Mallya is this flamboyant character. There's been a lot of comparison between the two gentlemen, Branson and Mallya. Isn't it a bit ironic, right? I mean, given the situation that Branson is here to announce the launch of or the relaunch of a Mumbai-London flight, and this is what's happening with Vijay Mallya. And the other thing which I find a bit ironic is Sir Branson is not very excited, doesn't seem very excited about the Indian Airlines market or industry for that matter. He's approaching a sort of a wait and watch approach. So what are your views on this?
I know there have been lots of comparisons of Vijay Mallya and Richard Branson. And I remember a few years ago, someone asked Mallya whether he saw himself as the Indian Branson, at which point he said not really, and that Branson was the English Mallya. Yeah. But that said, I looking at how their companies have done, and looking at Branson's own business philosophy, because he's written a couple of books, unlike Mallya, who hasn't written any books. So based on what you see, I think Branson is a far better businessman, right? He sold companies at a profit. He took some of his companies public very early on, but then realized that the kind of businesses he was in and the kind of vision he had for them would probably be better realized if these companies were private. So he is a firm believer in that. He's had his flops, right? But Virgin Music, for instance, didn't do very well. But I think my personal belief is he's a far better businessman than Mallya. And as a good businessman, you'll have to look at the environment. 5 years ago, I remember that Branson was very, very excited about setting shop in India if the rules were changed. I don't think that's the scenario anymore. The market has changed. I think it's clearly a low-cost market now. Even if you look at Jet Airways, and if you look at the way Jet Airways itself has changed its composition of flights and everything else, I think it's a market that's definitely skewed towards low cost. And Virgin is not low cost, right? It's a full service airline with very heavy emphasis on service. And there's a significant tax on fuel prices. India is very, very susceptible to the volatility in international fuel prices. So I think keeping these things in balance and looking at the health of the Indian aviation sector, anyone in their right mind would probably say exactly what Branson said, which is, I prefer to wait and watch and not do something foolish.
Moving on to another corporate story this week, Sun TV buying the Hyderabad franchise, the IPL franchise. What's the thinking behind that, do you think? I mean, do you think it was a surprising move, or what's the thinking?
It was a very surprising move, because one had heard of the fact that Sun had been interested in IPL franchise at several points in time. No one knew they were in the fray, and suddenly you see that they won this Hyderabad franchise. In fact, even when the previous Hyderabad franchise, Deccan Chargers, was on the block, Sun didn't evince any interest in bidding for it. BCCI, of course, cancelled that, and then asked for new bids and issued these things. I think if anything, I think it's a long-term play. I do believe that there are lots of synergies that exist between media companies and, let's say, an IPL franchise. So I think far more than, let's say, there exists between an IPL franchise and an airport company, right, or a cement company. So I think there are significant synergies. They didn't seem to work for Deccan Chargers, but I don't think that, in the case of Deccan Chronicle Holdings, I think their issue was that they overstretched themselves in various other fields. I think what we are probably seeing here is an effort by Sun TV to sort of spread its empire to Andhra Pradesh. They do have a presence through Gemini TV, which is a Telugu channel, and it's a very old Telugu channel launched in the first flush of satellite television in this country, the first half of the 90s. Hasn't really done well because very crowded market. But if you look at it now, Sakshi TV promoter Jagan is fighting a battle with the Congress on one side and the Central Bureau of Investigation on the other side. Deccan Chronicle has almost gone out of business. There seems to be some sort of vacuum there, and maybe that's the kind of thinking that is going into Sun's thinking. The Sun's approach, Sun's decision to bid for this franchise. The stock market, as most of us know, has reacted pretty adversely to it, and the stock is down. But I think you'll have to see it from a 5-year, 10-year perspective. I'm not sure they'll make money from it, right? But I think if they are able to successfully brand the Hyderabad franchise and then leverage that brand to grow their other business and make their other business stronger, that's an indirect benefit. It's a financial benefit still, but it's an indirect benefit, and I think that might well be what they want to do.
So it's basically a strategic move, a brand building, a strategic move.
I think it's a strategic move.